always stuff to be angry about. But now I like to have joy in there too, because it just feels to me, if I'm just always dwelling on the negative aspect of everything, I just kind of get stuck in a little rut there with it. I like to express joy and anger, happiness and depression, fear, ecstasy, all that stuff, because that's really for me what life is about.
Ghost Cult Magazine is here, and we welcome in Brian and Ann of Darsombra. How are you today?
Great.
Very good.
And who is the third member of the band today?
This is our cat, Bomb. He's named after Bomb Scott from AC/DC.
That's amazing.
Keep an eye out for when he starts trying to bite my arm off.
Good times. We're on the eve, as we record this. This interview will probably run at a later date, but on the eve of your new album, hopefully I'm saying this correctly, Dumesday Book. I have been a fan for a long time of this band and just followed your whole journey up to now. So this is exciting for me to get to talk to a band for the first time. Normally, a lot of times it's like, oh, let's not do a repeat of something, but this is going to be new to you. So at least me. So I like this for me. Yeah. And selfishly for everybody else watching, I think it'll be fun. Yeah, what a cool band you guys have, and such a scope of music you guys have made over the years. But I love this thing. I was just jamming out on your Bandcamp, and I love this trans-apocalyptic galaxy rock is the tag of your Bandcamp. That's surely a way to get noticed and be different from every other band that says like psychedelic instrumental-ish rock, right? Or stoner doom. A million bands have that tag, but I love that you have your own genre you made actually and on Bandcamp.
Yeah. Well, we didn't neatly fit into any of the other genres, so we just figured make up our own.
It totally works. It so works, and yeah, I just love the idea that you guys are like mad scientists putting like these, like, they're not songs as much as they're just like little mini epics, every one of them historically, but also on this new record, right? And so here's a good question to start with, really, is when you guys go to compose a song or make a song, does one of you come in with an idea and then the other comes in with it? Do you come up with stuff on your own? Is it live in the room with the cat? How do songs come out of the ether and become Darsombra songs?
He does like to come around when we practice.
Sometimes he tries to crawl into our song.
Yeah, he tried to crawl into the subwoofer one time, which was amazing.
And sometimes he'll sit on my keyboard and write his own dance tracks. He seems to be more into EDM than anything else. Like, he's not really a metal guy. But in all seriousness,
it could happen any and all of those ways. Sometimes one of us has an idea and they bring it to the table, and the other one's like, "That's cool. Let's work that out." Other times we're both just improvising, and we record a lot of our improvisations, and then we'll go back and listen to them and be like, "Oh, that's a little cool spot right there that we did. Let's turn that into something more." And then, but usually a lot of our stuff is sort of, because we're kind of loop based, because we don't have like a drummer, rhythm section per se. So the loops kind of become the rhythm section. So usually it starts off with one sort of riff that just repeats. And then we'll just add layers on top of it, and changes where we need them and stuff. So yeah, they're kind of like moods, and it almost feels more like modern. The way we compose almost feels a little bit more like modern classical than rock or pop music, because it's these unusual, song structures that don't typically go, verse, chorus, lead break, outro, So yeah.
There's also a lot of retrofitting, like, oh, I've got this idea for a song, I don't know how it's gonna work. Let's like record it and then see where it fits in the song. And usually there are a lot of surprises.
Yeah, happy accident.
Or unhappy accidents.
Amazing. I was gonna say this. I feel like I love the idea that drone is its own genre now, but I feel like drone is an oversimplification for what you do together. And I hear I know, Anne, you have a background in film and music videos and things, bear that out. But I do feel like there's this real cinematic quality to the music you make, and this album, of course, is no exception. And it's like you said, it's almost like composing, modern classical. It does feel like very soundtracky stuff, like almost like a Hans Zimmer movie soundtrack or something, as opposed to like it's a song and a song and a song, because these things are all movements of a bigger piece, it seems sometimes.
Yeah,
yeah, definitely.
And actually, funnily enough, this new album, we tried to actually make our version of a pop album with pop songs because of the fact that it has 10 songs on it instead of, one big 40-minute or 20-minute piece. But again, it's Darsombra's version of that, which is, very
Fair enough. What were some of the original artists the two of you bonded over? Because I'm just curious to know what, like, brought this unit together. I have my own ideas, but I'd like to hear from you.
Let's start there.
the first time we hung out.
The first time we met, we listened to Rush together.
Yeah.
And not just, moving pictures, the cassette that everybody's did, but
Caress of Steel.
Caress of Steel Rush.
Like the deep cuts.
Oh, deepest.
Who else did we bond over? Magma.
Oh, but that came later. I feel like when we first met, there was a big love of prog rock for both of us. He kind of turned me on to a lot of stuff that I wasn't that familiar with, like Cordy, and I feel like I probably brought some people as well. I was so into all those weird cut hip hop tracks, kind of little Bobby Jimmy and the Critters, a little bit of
Yo, Houdini were masters. Friends, how many of us have them? It's the question is never answerable. That's one of the greatest songs ever. And Nightmares of the Night and all these things. Freaks Come Out at Night, all the things. So it's funny that you said Rush, right? Because I also think about like the synthier 80s Rush that I love deeply as much as I love 2112. I played bass as a kid, but I love like the synthy early 80s Rush, right? Moving Pictures and Hemispheres too.
We're there from the beginning till the very end.
Yeah, some areas I like better than others,
but we'll listen to all of it.
The Rush,
it's all there,
Yeah.
all the way up.
And then how about the late 60s and early 70s Pink Floyd movie soundtrack stuff? I hear some of that in there too. I'm a huge fan of that era.
We bonded over that just sort of by default of our characters.
Yeah.
Like, we never even had the bond over Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody had to nail me to the wall and pick like a favorite band, I'd probably have to say, if they were going to lock me up with only one band to listen to for the rest of my life, it would probably be Pink Floyd.
I will lose all my metal credibility, but me too, actually. Everybody kind of knows that Pink Floyd is my favorite band, but it's not that big a secret. But I have a podcast where like every second episode we do something with Pink Floyd or talk about Pink Floyd. So yeah, it's not escapable for me. It's interesting, like, and then the vocal parts that do come on to the tracks, I often wonder if those are sort of after the bed of the track is made, or do you ever get like a vocal idea that inspires you to put a song to it, or is it really just that's the horse and the cart situation?
Usually the vocal tracks come later, but now everything, the sky's the limit. Like, we have a song sort of slowly boiling down right now that started with stuff about the joys of living, the municipality, and all of its absurdity. Keep an eye out on 25 or whenever for a song called Thing.
But yeah, usually
But that's the vocal first. Usually the
song sort of suggests to us the lyrics that come after it, or even if they're not, I say lyrics, but sometimes they're just syllables that aren't really, English language or anything like that. But yeah, usually a lot of times it's voice as another instrument.
Fair enough. I was going to say also, before I delve into this new album, it does feel like there is kind of a joy that comes through this music. I don't know if it's always joy for you both, but it feels joyful by the end. If you listen to a whole album or an EP or just a song, there's always some kind of, like a triumphant moment, or not all of them, but a lot of the tracks just feel, to me, very like emotional, like again classical music there's some kind of a climax and a resolution, but I don't know if I'm reaching there or not. You can help me or tell me.
That's there, and it's pretty intentional. I think I spent a long time doing a very angry, heavy band for and like pouring all my anger into that, and it was almost like I did it for therapy, and it worked so good that near the end of that band's duration or whatever lifespan, I kind of didn't have a lot of stuff to be angry about. There's still always stuff to be angry about. But now I like to have joy in there too, because it just feels to me, if I'm just always dwelling on the negative aspect of everything, I just kind of get stuck in a little rut there with it. I like to express joy and anger, happiness and depression, fear, ecstasy, all that stuff, because that's really for me what life is about. It's I don't like to be stuck in one corner where I have to be depressed and angry about everything all the time. It makes me depressed and angry all the time. And that's not fun after a while, you know?
Yeah, there's definitely, it's like we consider the alternate to being joyful that we're alive, or sense of lust for life. Like, well, yeah, we can ourselves, but I think we both have thought hard and chosen to be alive, and so there's a certain celebration of that. It is, it's a tough world we live in, and there are plenty of options that don't include continuing living. But I think to choose being alive is something to celebrate.
Agreed. And again, as you said it beautifully, the world is a tough place, and we need other things. And maybe because of this type, the band that this evolved into, this kind of project, you can paint with the whole paint box and not just the gray and the black and the white, right? So that's fortunate for the listeners. Before I go into the tracks with you, let's just talk. There's like a loose concept that this, the Dumesday Book that this was built based on. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, or do you want to leave up the mystery for a while?
Totally, completely valuable, tight-ass concept. So the songs were all composed during the initial part of lockdown, between like March of 2020 and maybe June of 2020, with tweaking as time went on, but like the skeleton of everything. We didn't have an exact order, but keeping that in mind and following our emotional path through that time and talking to our friends, kind of hearing their paths, we kind of sense almost, I don't want to call them universal feelings, because everybody went their own shit during the pandemic, but there were a lot of sort of key emotional states that seem to be part of all of our lives. Like, for instance, when lockdown first happened, great sense of uncertainty. And maybe when we started to hear about, vaccination, sense of, oh my goodness, I'm going to go into the world, but that makes me nervous, but I'm really excited. But I'm going to travel again, but what's it going to be like? And are people shitting in buckets everywhere? What's going on? Like, total confusion and sense of unprecedented reality kind of made its way into sort of the sequencing of the album. So the first side is sort of the, oh shit, it's happening. Hey, we're free now. Like, it's unprecedented time. We can build a new reality called the Doctor. Second side is, no, this is, and then the third side is like, well, we're learning how to kind of roll with the punches, sort of staying for the long haul, which is the azimuth. And then the fourth side is, we're gonna get vaccinated and go out in the world and everything's fine, right? Which is, a new bill and give it war, and Melanie's is kind of a return. So it follows a traditional Western story arc of the prodigal son, where like there's a character like who, is in the Hobbit town and has this big quest ahead of him, and he goes on this huge adventure. And there's a big change, and then he comes back to Hobbiton, changed Hobbit. Our big adventure was an adventure inwards, and the returning to home was returning. So it's like the idea of starting as touring musicians, being stuck at home for much longer than we're comfortable, and then going back home. Kind of like a prodigal son story.
I dig it. We're going to talk more about touring at the end of this conversation, but let's just delve into the tracks a little bit. And, whatever you want to share, it doesn't have to be super deep or lengthy, just a little bit on each track. I will call out the track names and you can just riff on whatever you like. As you alluded to, the opening track is Shelter in Place.
Yeah. I wanted we wanted it to sound like big and monolithic and imposing, and just sound like, and it's got this weird effects on it where there's like sounds going in reverse and sounds going forward. It just sounds very disjointed. And I think that was just supposed to be the old crap. What's going on? Buckle up. We have no idea what's going on, but it's heavy and it's going to be something, and so that's kind of where we went with that track.
The working title for that song, Majestic, and we kind of thought of that time at the very beginning, like March 2020, is this time of terrible majesty. I mean, I call it coronavirus, the king. That's the one that's going to take down the species. So the idea of awful majesty, like full of awe.
I dig it. The next track is Call the Doctor Pandemonium Mix, in parentheses.
Yeah, so in 2021, we released Call the Doctor Sunside, which was just something to put out there while everyone's stuck around and canceling tours and all that stuff, just to kind of, put some music out there. And it was supposed to be very sort of joyful. And the Sunside was sort of like, we called it the kitchen sink mix, because at the end of it, you start hearing cows and chickens and frogs and all, and bugs and all, and they're just, it just got this kind of glorious, funny, goofy, it's meant to be sort of goofy over the top. With the album mix, the Pandemonium mix, we wanted to have more of that sense of that initial summer of 2020 was more, a little more scarier than a day at the farm. And so instead of cows and chickens and frogs and all that, we had like sirens and police helicopters and bullhorns and dogs barking and dirt bikes driving all over the place and people yelling and stuff. And so that was the point with that. But in general, Call the Doctor, what would you say about it as a track beyond it?
Honestly, I haven't said this the other night in an interview about Call the Doctor. So there was that Peter Jackson Beatles documentary that came out like ago, maybe, and we watched it. And, it was great. Lord of the Rings of the Beatles. I think I'm seeing a theme. Lord of the Rings. But one scene that really sat with me was when, was it Ringo up and left or George up and somebody up and left?
George, yeah.
George up and left, and the remaining Beatles had like this crazy jam. They were like, well, fuck it, he's gone, let's not take him too seriously. Because if the Beatles are like a family, it's like dad is John Lennon, the terrifying father. Mom is Paul, the overbearing, smothering mother. The teenage son is George, and the baby that hides under the table when everybody's fighting is Ringo. So I don't know where I read that. It's not me. That's somebody else over that. But it totally makes sense. So when the teenage son is like, fuck it, you guys are fighting too much, I'm leaving. I'm sorry. I don't know if we can. It's the internet. There's cussing everywhere. So
you have to do a lot of bleeping.
We don't. We're ruined already by YouTube. We swear it's okay. Yeah.
So when George left, it was kind of like, all right, well, he's gone, and we don't know what the future holds, and we're the Beatles, so we're just gonna party and have this crazy bacchanal of sound. That's kind of the vibe of Call the Doctor, where it seems like this very positive, exciting pop song kind of thing, but beneath it, there's this sense of manic urgency, like, well, I'm going to be baked all the time now because I'm free. I don't have to go to work. Yay. But then there's a celebration of the change of reality, but there's also underlying anxiety here, which really does get expressed like kind of a bad.
Incredible. I love that documentary. There's a part 2 coming where they do like all of Get Back. And I like how Yoko is the hero of the story, not the villain she's been painted to be her whole life. So I loved it actually. But anyhow, Plague Times is next. How appropriate.
Yeah, so the pandemonium of the ending of Call the Doctor sort of blends right into Plague Times, which was based around just the sort of a guitar improvisation thing I did. I think
it's pretty much
the day when I was realizing, oh crap, this is real. We're canceling our Europe tour. And we don't know when, and we might be canceling our summer tour as well, and maybe the rest of the year. Everyone's saying this could be a couple of weeks, and other people are saying it's going to be several years, and this is just terrifying. I don't know what. And so I just went on my guitar and I just made this awful racket. Really, one of my favorite composers is George Ligeti, modern composer. I heard his music in a lot of Stanley Kubrick films like 2001 and The Shining and then Eyes Wide Shut. And I just wanted something that sounded like that like amorphous, horrible, anxious, dissonant kind of sound. And and then we added more to it with clashing keyboard sounds and bullhorns and stuff, and bugs. There was a lot of, this wasn't 2020, but 2021 was a lot of cicadas here in Baltimore. So we added the 17-year cicadas into the sound as well. Just a cacophony of
I mean, I see a little bit something different in there. Obviously I wasn't up with that guitar improvisational part, but listening to it, like kind of my sort of deeper mind state, I think of it like a Frank Frazetta painting of a barbarian with this big like battle axe that he uses to kill people, and he's bored and he's petulant. So there's like this sense of like, well, fuck, what do I do now? Like that's what the guitar kind of comes across to me. There's a vocal part over it that is like kind of a spoken word part. We were laughing as we put it together. It was the one I wrote, maybe on very fungal friends, and it was like something like Plague Times, what a great time to be alive. Plague Times, we're all gonna die, or something like that. And Brian sort of manipulated the sound, and we kept doing these vocal takes, and it didn't really work until we decided, well, let's do a vocal take like Henry Rollins on Family Man. So there is this kind of like muscle-bound barbarian underneath of this that just doesn't know what to do with it.
Nicely done. And then, just again, to continue the theme, Everything is Canceled is the next song. We all felt that very deeply when everything was canceled, right?
And the way the album is set up, it kind of segues from the pandemonium ending section, Call the Doctor to Plague Times to Everything is Canceled. That was one of the last tracks I think that we completed on the album. It was a jam.
But one of the first vocal part, that was a song that was sort of kind of written around.
Yeah, and it was just we'd written the guitar loop a while, but figuring out where it was going to go and how it was all going to knit together was, something. And we wanted it to be doomy and, and then go into this weird little middle section where these almost goblin kind of voices are chanting, everything is canceled. And then it comes out of that and goes into this sort of one take improv jam that we did where we just thought, wow, that sounds perfect just the way it is. I can never recreate that lead. I was experimenting with an envelope filter and having a lot of fun with that. And I'm like, I'll never play that lead like that again. It's a one-shot deal. So we edited that into the ending section of the song as well. It was a lot of fun putting that together. It kind of it reminded me sort of like, I like the band The Residents a lot. It was our kind of like, like let's get weird, like really weird, like the Residents kind of. So.
Well, part of the vocal stuff that kind of like, I don't want to say inspired the song, but got kind of like shoehorned into it was maybe like Mark said. I started doing all this yard work. What else are you gonna do? And part of that was turning our compost pit, like our yard compost. We don't have a big yard, but as I was doing it, all right,
he's ready.
He's done. As I was doing it, I was kind of just thinking to myself, everything is canceled. Everything is canceled. The world is. I recorded that on my phone, like just okay, save that for later. So it's funny because like that was written like right at the beginning, right when everything was sort of shutting down, but then found its way into the song, I think, 5 months.
Alrighty, well, that was very prescient of you. You knew without knowing, intuitively, where we were heading. Sadly. But we got through it. That's the important thing. The next track is Night Garden, the Profundo mix.
Yeah, so Night Garden was like sort of the B-side to Call the Doctor. When we put that out in 2021, it was like Call the Doctor Sun side, Night Garden Moon side. And we knew both of those songs were going to be on the next album, but we wanted to make sure that they were, a little different so that people were like, we already put these songs out 2 years ago, you're just recycling them. So it's the same, Night Garden song from before, but we added made it a little deeper, a little heavier.
Thematically, Night Garden kind of represents like that moment when you're freaked out so much that there's really nothing to do but go out and wander around the garden. Especially that garden that we've been like working on, because what else are you gonna be doing?
Yeah, our yard was amazing that year because we'd never been home for that long of a time to be able to tend to our garden and our garden stuff. And it was
metaphor too, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, well, we're stuck at home, so let's tend to our garden metaphorically and reap the beauty of that and be, the cup gets filled up from.
And it's sort of melancholy, but it's mellow and collie. but it's like it's that sort of
it's kind of a lullaby as well.
Yeah, it's sort of a lullaby, and it's definitely that part of the pandemic where we were sort of like, okay, it's not, the world's not ending. There's still other things to be grateful for, one of which is our garden and our friends at home. We really got to, know our neighbors and stuff because we couldn't do anything but walk around that neighborhood, so.
Well, we were also playing shows on
we would play shows
to go back to the Beatles
outside of our house just to.
Yeah, we would get on the roof of the garage and play shows, and the neighbors would love that. And some of the footage from the Night Garden video was shot.
And actually, when that was right as the pandemic happened, we had a whole European tour that was supposed to be like on like a month and a half from like beginning of April to middle of May 2020. And we were so bummed, we just started doing a series of live streams from different rooms in the house over the course of what was supposed to be our European tour. So, Night Garden kind of came out of that, just being home and being in your garden, just kind of letting the inevitability of it all sink in, but realize it's not the end of everything. It's sad, but life goes on.
Right on. I love those live streams, by the way. Azimuth is the next track.
I thought it was done.
We wrote that, we thought it was going to be a 6-minute jam because it's just 2 chords going back and forth.
It's the Alex Lifeson chord from Hemispheres, playing on the keyboard and that evolved.
It sort of became the centerpiece of the album. It was just this
long. It's the most Darsombra song on the album.
Yeah, this just slow meditation that we just build up and build up and build up and build up, and then we kind of take it back down at the end. I don't really have what else can
It
you say
tells a
about it?
story. I think of it. I'll put this. I think of it as any relationship that you sustain for a long period of time. That might be a relationship with your partner, or partners, or mental health, or home, your home city, your neighborhood, your job, whatever it is. People make songs about relationships starting. They don't really make a lot of music about the other relationship. And any relationship that is sustainable. And so azimuth, I think of it as like the azimuth is the angle. I mean, the azimuth of the sun, of course, the angle of the sun looking out the horizon. And one thing that I noticed is we were at home, it's just, oh wow, the sun is up, back down, back up again. And I can just look out the window and notice the change. But maybe I wouldn't notice if I was touring in the spring and fall as we usually are. So that idea of like, okay, we're in this for the long run, we're here, we're maintaining our mental health, we're maintaining our physical health, the health of our cat, whatever, the health of our family. I think that would be kind of like the underlying energy.
Right on. Still Canceled is the next track. Still Canceled.
Little snippet, little
Scary.
30-second sort of reprise,
Scary.
little 30-second reprise of everything is canceled from the beginning of, from earlier in the album. Just bring back that little middle theme for just a little bit, just to kind of.
And fun fact.
Yeah. I don't play a lot of acoustic guitar on our albums, so this is like one of them.
And what was I playing?
You were playing a harmonium.
Right. It sounds like
sort
a
of like
saxophone,
sort of like a pump keyboard kind of thing.
acoustic.
Randomly, I saw a band play one recently, and I was like, "Oh, I forgot that existed. That's amazing." I feel like Still Canceled is like Still Canceled slight return from Everything Is Canceled. But anyway,
Very slight.
very slight. But as we get to the home stretch of the album, A New Dell is the 8th track.
That's kind of the one put on like bills with Grateful Dead cover bands.
We get on all kinds of bills.
People
Metal
mistake
bills.
us for jam bands.
Yeah, people think we're a jam band or an improv band or a
Mark
noise
my
band.
words,
We
they
are not.
mistake us for a jam.
That's our most. It's guitar noodles, hence the name On New Dell.
Right.
It's supposed to. It's
It's
just
the most jam band song.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not trying to be a jam band, obviously. Grateful Dead's great. Anthem of the Sun, one of my favorite albums of all time. We want to bring the bad trip as well as the good trip. New Dells is, in my book, I kind of see it energetically as we might get back on tour again. Like that kind of dreaming. Sonically, there's a lot of sort of King Crimson kind of pouring in.
The very ending sounds a lot like Discipline era King Crimson. That just sort of
that was another bonding band.
happened. Yeah, King Crimson was another bonding band. But that sort of happened as we started putting the elements together. It started becoming this thing that had all these like weaving, interlocking parts as we started putting all the different loops together at the very end. And I thought, wow, this sounds like Discipline era King Crimson, but it was entirely conceived that way. But Robert Fripp and King Crimson in general have always been big influences.
That makes a lot of sense. Give It Lore is the penultimate track.
Give It Lore is a lot of fun. Just saw the video to that one. Kind of tells the story of that song is like it's posted around the background loop very similar to A New Dell, and I think that was one where the lyrics came after the guitar, and at some point the guitar Brian made a recording of the guitar part for that song. To me, it sounded like it was saying Lore, like the way the guitar sounded. Give It Lore is a chapter of a book from 1890 called Old Time Punishment my dad had when I was a kid. I used to pull the book off the shelf. I was a big picture, I've always been really visual. But it was a book about all these different horrible things that we used to do to punish you for stealing. One of the chapters was Give It Lore, and I always thought as a child, it's pronounced Gibe Lore, but I always thought that was the funniest thing, words together. That was a classic example of funny word salad sound turns into actual theme for the song and more for the video. Sense of false optimism during. So that song is kind of, in my mind, like a concept. It's about during the pandemic, like a lot of people have heritage that survived the Black Plague. The Black Plague didn't affect just Europe. It affected Africa, Asia, all over the world, except for maybe North and South America. And so with the plague, like in our sort of ancestral memory, I think that there were a lot of weird energetic triggers that came up. Like, remember how there was a moment when suddenly woo-woo stuff turned it up? Like, oh, I don't need medicine. I can take this supplement and cure my diabetes. Or I can eat this herb and I won't catch COVID or whatever it is. I feel like the Black Plague, which lasted 100 years, and for germ theory, that was of its time. Like people would think, well, if you smell a good smell like lavender, you won't catch that plague. Like, no, it doesn't quite work that way. So give it lore in my mind is a little bit about that conservative quackery. I don't know. It's more than that. I don't want to emphasize it too much, but more just there's this idea that we're in plague times anyway. There's only so much you can trust.
And with sonically with that song, we tried to condense like what we normally would in the past do take 20 or 40 minutes to do, and try to get it into something that was under 10 minutes. So it has like the sort of, drony guitar wailing part in the beginning with the atmospherics, and then it goes into a loop, and then it builds on that and all. And so, that was like a challenge to be like, how can we do something concise for a change and still be very much like what you're used to hearing from Darsombra? That one. We got it under 9 minutes. So
It's a short one. Lot of good stuff you unpack there, and then the album closes with Mellow Knees.
yeah.
That's a fun song.
That was a jam, synth jam.
Real simple. I think the idea was it was Ann and Brian's trying to turn to the road.
Yeah, it was. I was playing my 8-string bass, and Ann was playing a keyboard line, and we just sort of something very simple. And it's a nice note to sort of end the album on because it feels very like, but it's short.
It's named for a friend of ours that we know. She and her husband were putting together a video to promote her True Witch 100. She asked, "Do you have any songs that we could?" Oh, all right, this years before that. And we picked that one, sent it to her, and it worked great. And then later we were coming up with the title, and we're like, this is Melody's song. Melody's song. All right, let's call it Melodies. So that's this reminder of like friends that we can't wait to see on the road, the adventures we have. Here we come, we're back.
Amazing. Send us Melanie's Candle Company name so we can shout it out in the description. You can pass it along.
Witchy Wicks.
Witchy Wicks, that's perfect, yeah. We're going to look that up and share that for sure. Just as I want to give you back the rest of your day, and I really appreciate this whole conversation. So you brought up touring again, and, touring is a big part of what you guys do. It's not just home music, it's music you bring out to the world, and you have a huge tour booked, including a record release show. But the show I want to talk about is the final show of the upcoming humongous tour, which is the Shadow Woods reunion. So shout out to my dear friend Mary Spiro, M.A. Spiro, online. And Shadow Woods, you guys have played it. You are literally, there's definitely an online exchange where she said if I had like a band that was one of the bands that this thing was made for, it would be you. So I wanted to have you talk about Shadow Woods in general and this Shadow Woods reunion show coming up this fall.
Yeah, so I think Mary asked us to play the first Shadow Woods, and I think we couldn't do it because we were already doing a different tour somewhere else at the time. But then when we heard all the stories of the bands that did play the first year, we were like, oh my God, we got to make sure we're home next year if we get asked to play it again, because that sounds like it's right up our alley. It was this metal camping festival out in the woods for like 2 or 3 days with bands, and originally there was a stage way you had to hike down like into the woods, deep into the woods to go to this amphitheater that was in the woods. And then there was other stages. There was a big field meadow kind of area with a big stage there, and there was another little room, and then there was even a little pavilion that people would do like sort of acoustic sets. And so we made sure we were around for the second one, and we made sure we got to play on the woods stage because that's us in our element. And we made sure we went on after dark so we could do the visual show as well. And it was just received amazingly. We're vaguely a metal band. I have a metal background.
We're metal adjacent.
Metal adjacent. Yeah. So I was like, I don't know if they're gonna like us, because we're kind of hippy dippy a little bit, not completely metal, but but metal enough, and we're very big fans of metal music. So the community there like embraced us.
Metalheads are open-minded. It's just something I've discovered. Like, if you put care into your craft as a musician,
I mean, they're basically just big music nerds, which is what we are. And so those are the kind of people you want as your fans, people that love music and collect music and go to shows.
And keep an open mind.
And keep an open mind. So we love it. We've been back several times. We did the Shadow Frost edition, and we did some other editions of Shadow Woods, and we've done a couple of the reunion shows. We haven't been at or played on all of them, but we've done a lot of them. And anytime Mary asks us to do anything, we're there because she's just an amazing person. and we're very grateful to her for what she does for the scene.
Shadowwood's book and the Dumesday
Right.
right before everything.
That was our last show.
And then there was a Shadowwoods.
Remember, it was 2021
Yeah, I
or
think it was summer.
2022?
I think it was 2021.
Yeah, but so Shadowwood's events were the beginning and
Right on. And shout out to them. Actually, I seem to remember the minute everything started to come back in the summer of 21. There was a Shadowwoods announcement, which I think was a sigh of relief for that whole area and for everybody. And I hope these reunion gigs keep going. I don't know if they're forever, but we appreciate that they're out there happening. Thank you again, Mary. Thank the two of you, Brian and Ann from Darsombra. Dumesday Book is coming out. This interview will run at a later date, but you're on tour, back on tour forever probably, and so good to see it. Brian, Ann, and Bon, who's not in the shot anymore, but they're back. All right, Bon is back. Hello, Bon, and thanks so much for being here and hanging out with Ghost Cult. I really appreciate you guys, and best of luck.
We
Whatever.
appreciate it.
thank you very much. Take care.